Turning our attention to the other big trial we've been following for weeks now. Sean Diddy Combs out in New York. The defense team could find themselves in the spotlight inside of the courtroom soon as the government's case is winding down. How will it look for this once powerful music executive? Also next, Bryan Kohberger was back in court yesterday as his attorneys look to delay his upcoming trial. But could testimony from a possible witness tip the scales? We have what you may have missed yesterday. In the spotlight this morning, Sean Diddy Combs' defense team is preparing to begin their case in his sex trafficking trial. On Wednesday, the judge postponed the proceedings because one of the jurors fell ill on the way to the courthouse, and there's no court today because of the Juneteenth federal holiday. Combs' attorneys could begin their case either tomorrow or early next week. So before we start talking about who we might see and what we might see during this trial in the defense case, let's revisit some of the best moments for the prosecution in the Sean Diddy Combs case.
Kidnapping, arson, drugs, sex crimes, bribery, and obstruction. These are just some of the crimes that the defendant and his inner circle committed again and again.
How long were you awake during the freak-off?
The whole time.
Did you get any sleep?
No.
Did you want to sleep?
Yes.
How did you stay awake that whole time?
The drugs, honestly, helped.
What kind of drugs kept you awake?
Ecstasy and Molly, for sure. We started to do other drugs, like cocaine, later on.
Who gave you the ecstasy?
Sean.
Who gave you the Molly?
Sean.
Who gave you the cocaine?
Sean.
How would Ms. Ventura react when you told her to leave?
Cass looked torn. Like, she would listen, but I could see the fear.
What did Ms. Ventura confide in you specifically about that abuse?
That he would hit her, sometimes kick her.
And you said he kept kicking her. Was he kicking her more than once?
Yes. He repeatedly kicked her, and she just kept. Each kick, she would crouch into more and more of a fetal position.
What happened as you were outside smoking a cigarette by a car?
Puff came around and threw me on the car and started choking me out.
What are some of the violent things that Mr. Combs has done to you?
He has thrown things at me. He has thrown me against the wall. He has thrown me into a pool. He has thrown an ice bucket on my head. He has slammed my arm into a door. He has also sexually assaulted me.
Did Mr. Combs put his hand up your dress?
Yes.
Did you want him to do that?
No.
Were you able to tell Mr. Combs no in that moment?
No.
Why not?
I was shocked and I froze. I didn't even process what was happening.
Can you explain to us, using your arms and your hands, how Sean actually put you into that chokehold?
I remember he came up behind me and just squeezed my neck in between his arms. And I just remember just grabbing his arm, and I couldn't even touch my neck. It was so tight. And I was on my tippy toes, and I thought I was going to pass out.
So how does Combs' defense team counter all of this testimony, including what you just heard? I mean, the horrific allegations by those who the prosecution say are victims in this case. We're going to talk about it with our guests who are standing by. We have with us now entertainment commentator Holland Reed, and John Phillips is back with us, trial attorney out in Florida. Let's talk about this, Holland, in terms of where we are now. We're at the defense case. It's been several weeks of testimony. What do you know about the interest that is still in this case, and what's the buzz? What do people expect from the defense?
Well, the interest is still extremely high, especially since they just showed the jurors brief clips of these freak-off tapes, which were unbelievably disturbing, according to insiders that are in the courtroom who have been watching the jurors react and having that emotional reaction. I think now, of course, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's more so the burden of proof. Were those videos consensual? She was under drugs, as we just heard in the audio. It's all debatable, but I think the defense is going to try to paint that picture that she was just a willing participant. But what we're seeing is the strategic patterns of abuse, manipulation, and the power dynamic that Sean had from day one as one of the biggest moguls in the world. And so it's going to be, I think, an uphill battle for them, especially when you have such an emotional and visceral reaction from the jury after watching the evidence, the visual evidence of some of this abuse that had been taking place.
That's one of the most difficult things about this case. These jurors were vetted on that during jury selection. Will you be able to sit through it? John Phillips, what do you anticipate from the defense? Actually, let's first look at what we do know about their lineup. They have given an estimate of 2 to 5 days in terms of how long their case is going to go. They have a witness from Bad Boy Entertainment, a vice president of the company that, of course, Sean Combs founded, Vashta Dunlap, and also a forensic psychiatrist to address substance abuse. Your thoughts, John Phillips, on how compelling that will be to a jury after everything they've heard?
Let's be very clear. Teenie Geragos is extremely talented. She's the daughter of Mark Geragos, you know, super lawyer to the stars, a good friend to me. And they've done a good job trying to make this, okay, he maybe he's guilty of battery. Maybe he should have been charged with domestic violence, but sex trafficking and the level of you know, conspiracy here, it isn't where we are. This is a group of people that had a lavish lifestyle that was different from yours, but the cocaine, the drugs, the sex was all a part of their lifestyle. Now, the other side, and the prosecutors have done a great job, is this was coercive control. This is things that they didn't want to do, but were afraid, you know, the extortion, they were afraid of Diddy. And so you've still got the battle. The thing that we all on the outside don't see and haven't seen are these tapes, which are extremely, you know, important to really be able to process what the jury's seen and we're, you know, kind of left in the dark about, other than kind of hearsay, about what actually was depicted.
Yeah, really graphic evidence that's being shown to this jury. Holland, we saw reports of Kanye West being inside of this courthouse wanting to support the defendant. I don't know that we would see him on the stand. I don't know what folks are thinking in terms of why he's there and what support he is lending while there. But what do you think about celebrities at this stage of the case? We haven't seen really anyone else supporting this defendant.
Well, Kanye is Kanye, and we know he is a character, and he's a performer, and he will do anything for attention. We've seen that 1,000 times sideways. What I do think is important is that he's not being silent, and everyone else has been. There's been immunity across the board. That we perceived, what we think, people that have made their deals, whether it was are just kind of being quiet because they don't want to touch this situation. But seeing Kanye, it just reminds us that this is a spectacle, and this is so much deeper than we probably even can imagine, when two of the biggest heavy hitters in the industry are supporting each other on something so graphic and so just, it's tragic across the board. So seeing him show up, knowing all the information that he knows is kind of questionable, but it definitely just makes us go back to, this is also not just a legal federal case. This is an entertainment spectacle.
Holland, I want a quick follow-up with you about the substance abuse. We've got this forensic psychiatrist who's going to testify. There's been a lot of allegations about drug use on both ends, Diddy's and the alleged victims. How do you think the jury is receiving that?
Just in my personal opinion, listening to the audio, you know, when you're under the influence, and that influence that you're under is literally being given to you or forced to you by someone in that power dynamic, I think it is going to give the jury a little bit of a pause to look at it, not so much as just this willing, consensual 20-something-year-old participant in freak-offs or, you know, any type of sexual acts with prostitutes. I think they're going to say, well, maybe if she had her autonomy and she had her wherewithal, you know, a little bit more stable, maybe some of this wouldn't have happened. But because of the lifestyle, because of all of these other scenarios, she was not maybe in her right mind. I am not an expert. I can only speak off of personal friends, relationships that I've seen people not be in their right mind to participate willingly in situations that these women and these other men have expressed.
Oh, yeah. And John, when you talk about, you already touched on the idea that this defense is doing something that a lot of defense attorneys wouldn't do. They admitted in front of this jury that yes, he is abusive. Yes, there may have been domestic violence. There was drug use. He was a terrible boyfriend, but this wasn't RICO and this wasn't sex trafficking. It's like they know they don't have the facts, but they're arguing the law. What do you think is their strongest approach as we get closer to a jury deliberation?
You know, great trial lawyers talk about embracing the horror, right? You've got bad boy, right? Like you've got bad boy. And so you've got to acknowledge that this is a bad boy. And the people around him knew that, but it wasn't that bad. And so, you know, that's kind of what they've embraced. You know, again, the Garagos family, you know, is law. And let me say one more thing. And speaking of, you know, being selfish, this is the tie that my children and shirt that my children gave me for Father's Day. So thanks, Bennett, Weston, and Jonathan.
That's awesome. Well, happy Thursday to you, John Phillips, and to you, Holland Reed. Thank you for being with us. We will see what happens in the Sean Diddy Combs case. That'll be tomorrow here on Court TV. But coming up on Opening Statements.